I am a person in recovery,
And I'm a family physician, medical director at the Westside Community Clinic.
survivor of domestic violence, homelessness, gang affiliated.
We provide HIV-specific family medicine care.
I would end up diagnosed with the HIV virus.
I've been working in the field for over a decade.
It was that day that I realized
Many other places in the world manage effectively HIV, and we know that we can do that here too.
I needed a new way to live.
All right, those were today's guests, Starla Pelletier and Dr. Larissa Kiesman. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks, coming to you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Here we come, Starla. How's the nerves?
They're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the music is playing, the lights are on, and the stream is active, so my nerves are not too bad right now. You watch
That's
something
good.
go sideways and you can see the hair come out in high definition.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to say before we jump in today?
I'm just happy to be here to share my story with all you guys and bring a little awareness to some of those who might not be able to be where I am today.
Awesome. All right, let's bring in Larissa. Hey, Larissa.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. You know, like you said,
Yeah.
It's cold outside. Happy to be indoors.
Yes,
Happy to be one of the lucky ones. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fact. Is there anything that you'd like to say today before we jump in?
No, I'm just really thankful to be here and have the opportunity to discuss and hear from Starla and hear her story and see where we can take things. Hopefully, raise some good awareness.
Awesome. Okay, well, here we go.
This is Hard Knox Talks.
All right, before we jump in, I'd just like to let our viewers and listeners know that today's live production is title sponsored by the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, helping women before, during, and after incarceration, prairie harm reduction, emphasizing local action with national impact, and the Persons Living with AIDS Network of Saskatchewan, providing life, hope, and wellness for those living with HIV/AIDS. Okay, all eyes on Starla. Why don't we start with a little bit about you being a person in recovery? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, I'm actually in 2 years in recovery for meth and opioid addiction, as well as living with HIV. I've had a lot of good things happen since that,
Mm-hmm.
from being in the dark and not being sure I could get to where I am now.
How did the substance use start? Did you start really young?
No, I experienced when I was younger, but it was never an issue until a previous relationship.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of relationships, you mentioned in the intro and in the conversation we had before the show that you've experienced domestic violence. Do you think that contributed to the harmful behaviors that you were displaying?
100%. It was the narcissism that got the best of our relationship, and being told that you're gonna be a junkie like your mom, or that you are going to be a whore like your mom. You just kind of he surprised. He took everything he could to break me down, and I started believing those things. Right, so I wanted to lash back and get back to him. So I started using drugs, started sleeping, escorting. That's what I got into, to just being a full-blown junkie, which led me to the streets, right? And then, becoming gang affiliated and eventually dealing with homelessness to now being diagnosed with HIV.
So when you first tried substances as a result of, trying to, I don't know, would escape be accurate?
Yeah.
Did you achieve that? Like, did they give you what you needed at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They sure did. I was so hurt and I was so angry. The more drugs I did, the better it was to being, constantly now looking for my next fix. And those highs wouldn't last very long, right? As soon as I did it, boom, looking for my next one, getting sick. So
you were an IV user? Was that right off the
yeah,
hop, or did you take a while to graduate to that?
it took a while, but that was also something not by my choice. It was somebody that I would end up with that would do it to me while I was sleeping. And like, because when I would come off the meth, I'd sleep hard. You could move me if you wanted, or, I was just a hard sleeper. So it was probably about a month into it that I woke up and I was sick. Like I could not, I thought I had the flu, and unfortunately he was doctoring me while I was sleeping. And I can remember him telling me with a smirk, he's like, I told you I'd eventually get you. And that was the end of it. Then it became, I came to Saskatoon and I didn't know how to doctor myself. I was looking for somebody to do it for me. Till one day I just had to do it. Nobody was around that could do it. Nobody wanted to do it.
So,
and that was just in a 5-year span.
Tell us a little bit about the thoughts around that. Now, I mean, it's not really a secret that there are infectious diseases that are being transmitted through intravenous drug use. When you got into that, were you concerned about that at all, or were you so like lost in the I don't know if I would say psychosis, but lost in the life, lost in the escapism that didn't really cross your mind or like seem like something that could happen to you?
At the time, it didn't seem like it could be something because I considered myself a closet junkie. I didn't share my stuff with nobody, until I became so lost and I didn't realize what was going on around me. Right? Eventually, and it's hard to say where I got it, but I got it.
Tell us about the days leading up to your diagnosis.
I had come home. I had got myself into detox, and then I came home and I got on the Suboxone. And I was at home and I got really sick, really bad. I was 98 pounds. I could not eat. I could not walk. It seemed like it was forever. Like I was in this bad dream and I just wasn't coming out of it until one day, like we had gone to the hospital twice and they just sent me home with antibiotics. And then oddly enough, I felt like they worked. And then it just kept coming back. And finally I said, Mom, I got to go back. Something's wrong. Something's not right. That's when she took me to the hospital. Like she said, she dropped me off like a sack of potatoes and she had to leave, So I'm in there and they did all their tests. We did CAT scans, MRIs, you name it. Every test was done to see what was going on. And the doctor came into the room and I'm sitting in this room, like in the back hallway. And I'm sitting in this room. That doctor comes in. He's like, yeah, your tests look good. CAT scans are looking good. And just as he was about to leave, he turned around and he said, oh, by the way, you tested positive for HIV. And then he walked out the room.
Wow.
And I'm left there in this room to deal with this on my own.
What was your first thoughts?
I don't know what my thoughts were. I tried to sleep. I tried to call my mom to come and get me so she could take me home. Sorry, I'm feeling emotional. I wasn't.
It's okay.
And she came and got me that morning. And I got in the car and she said, so what's going on? I said, everything's good. I was like, I'm just really bad flu, I said. And she got me home. And just as I was getting out of the car, I turned around and said to her, just the way that doctor said to me, I was like, I tested positive for HIV, and I walked into the house and I went downstairs. And she was right behind me. And she just grabbed me and she hugged me and she was like, it's okay, my girl, she said. Yeah. There's meds, she knew so much more than I did. And she's like, we're going to get you through this. And, so it was just kind of back and forth through that. And then I ended up in a bad psychosis and ended up at the hospital. And then I woke up and it was like almost Christmas.
Whoa.
So now I'm yeah, it was intense.
Nicole sending
So
you some virtual hugs.
sorry, guys.
No,
I wasn't.
Don't
it's
apologize.
it's fine. You know what? At this point, why don't we bring in Larissa for a minute here? Hello again, Larissa. Now, certainly you've been on the other side of that conversation and
Mhm.
immersed in the service providing community. Are you seeing a lot of stigma around HIV/AIDS? Not unlike what Starla saw that day.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say thanks to Starla for even just sharing that piece of your story with us. It's such a heavy experience for you to go through, and I know it doesn't really matter. It's lip service, but my apologies on behalf of the the system that treated you that way, right? Because that's not the way things are supposed to go. Yeah, I mean, certainly HIV, it's really, really stigmatizing, and even in Starla's experience, you can see the stigma. Like, why wouldn't a healthcare professional just want to talk about what's going on with you, right? Like, there's so
Yeah.
many ways we can talk about HIV, and it doesn't have to be like that. We can explain things in a way that does not make it understandable to somebody, to let people know how much things have changed, since we first learned about HIV in the 80s. But, just to drop some letters onto somebody and leave the room it's horrible. It's a horrible. But I think it does speak to the stigma, right? I think it speaks to across, not just amongst people living with it, but people who are also serving in the community and people who are working in healthcare, and just, not having a good way of dealing with this very, very manageable condition, right?
Okay. Starla, now you already sort of touched on how your mom responded, but certainly, I mean, you know more now, and other people in your life are more educated now. But yeah, how did your family respond when they found out?
I honestly didn't really tell a whole lot of people other than my children, and that was probably one of the hardest things to do, because countless times they nearly lost me from overdose.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm telling them that I'm living with this virus, right? But I waited a little bit to tell them. I wanted to educate myself a little bit more so that I could prepare them. And honestly, they've been nothing but supportive. My older boys are a little shy around it, but they're more caring, they're more giving, and they're more open to it, and learning and growing together with me as I'm learning too. Because there's still lots I don't know. I just know from what I'm going through in my own experience and living with it.
Yeah.
So I just yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, good, yeah. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah. So tell us about the treatment process, because clearly you're living well now. Was it a tough journey?
Oh yeah. In the beginning, it was all tests. I was constantly going for, like, they'd be taking 20 vials, and I'd be passing out in the seat, and then I was on different medications. I was taking 6 different medications all at once. I think that was just to get me where I needed to be. Then they stuck me on this one medication, and I was throwing up all the time after I would take it. And it was probably like that for about a year. And finally, I was just like telling my doctor, something like, I'm not, like, it's not doing good. My viral loads and that weren't well. Like, they were still where they were when I first found out. And then they put me on different medication, and it would be in July of this year that my doctor called me and was telling me that I would be undetectable. It had to get me to get clean, to keep doing my meds, to keep doing it. And I have an amazing support system as well. Yeah. That's what helped me too.
Sorry to interrupt, Starla. I just want to clarify. So currently your viral load is undetectable?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes. Congratulations, girl.
Oh, thank you.
Congrats.
So, now last week we had Aaron Beckwell on the stream, and we were talking about harm reduction and HIV/AIDS and all of these things. You chose recovery when you found out that you were infected, correct?
Yes.
So, and you had a safe place to go and receive your treatment and deal with the fallout and all of that, correct?
Yes.
So when we're talking about people who don't have these things, people that don't have a safe place to live, do you think that you could have maintained that treatment regimen if you didn't have a safe place to heal?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because a lot of the people that I was with out there, once they found out they were HIV positive, they just kind of gave up. They'll take their meds here and there, or, but they're still really active in using their drugs and, living that transient life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have. I think I probably would have ended up dead for sure.
And that's not unlike what Aaron said. When we take some of these medications, and like you just described, you get quite sick, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a safe place that's warm and you can be vulnerable in this space, I can see it being very unlikely that you would be able to continue that regimen to fruition. So
Absolutely.
I'd like to know, since we're on this topic, Starla, aside from the medication, I assume that there was like other lifestyle, specifically like dietary needs that would need to be met, which again kind of ties into Dan's commentary about services available, and if people are transient, how impossible it is in order to achieve what you have.
I take what I need to take to keep myself healthy.
like, is it specific? Like, is it very specific to what you need because of the infection?
Yeah, they are. Like, my doctor gave me this list of what I needed to do, and that's what I'm following. Because I want to stay healthy. I need to stay healthy. Prior to this, right, I said before, when I was actively using, I remember telling my mom that if I ever caught HIV, I'd probably kill myself, right? Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know what I know now. And when I found out that I had the HIV, and when I was better, I knew that I wanted to live. I knew that I needed to take back my life, take back what was taken from me, and come out and be stronger for those who, might not be able, or might not feel like they can get there, but they can,
Who would walk your path if they knew there was a way.
Exactly.
So did you attend any like peer support groups? Are there peer support groups out there for people living with HIV?
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that. Like, is it similar to, say, a 12-step fellowship, or is it? Like, tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
So they provide, once they, they're in, they have groups that provide, there's an HIV strategy. You have Road to Recovery that was around addictions, and then there's the elders that come in as well. They do get lunches provided. There are hot lunches on some days. They get tons of support there, and the ladies there are a big help. We also provide bus tickets for cold weather or to appointments, or they need to go to the hospital. Like, there's all kinds of support there, but there needs to be more, right? Because there's just the network, not anywhere else. I mean, you got Heart, and you got, but there needs to be more places.
What's Heart?
For support. Heart?
Yeah, that's our HIV AIDS response team that's operates through Sanctum Care Group. And so they work to engage people, who are diagnosed, newly diagnosed, or diagnosed in hospital and not housed and not on assistance or anything like that, and get them the supports, get them connected, get them to the doctor, that kind of thing. So
how are those sorts of supports funded?
So it's challenging to have, so that program, the Heart program, we we expanded, got that program off the ground. I think it's about 3 to 5 years ago, more closer to 5. The pandemic, how it messed up everybody's minds. So it's probably closer to 5 years ago.
Feels like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. That was, we actually had to get external sort of industry funding. So it wasn't government funding, didn't come from the government. It was through industry providing support for a pilot project, and proof of concept of that project. And then we were, Sanctum Care Group was able to take that to get it funded by the Ministry of Health. Unfortunately, that's a little bit the way of it in this field. There's the new money that's available for managing this crisis is nowhere to be found. And so we actually have to rely on corporate help in order to get things off the ground. And that's how HEART came to be.
Yeah. Okay, well, before we start grilling you more, Larissa, I've just got a couple of things left for Starla. Now, you mentioned your viral load is undetectable, and that's very new language for me. I'll be completely transparent about that. You're definitely the expert in the room here. Tell us a little bit more about what that means exactly. Does that mean that you can't pass it on? Does that mean you can have kids now? Tell us about that.
Yep. I just know I'm undetectable, and I just know that if I wanted to have children, I could without passing it on, and I could have a partner without passing it on. I'll still play it safe. I'm not trying to be in the dating field yet. I still got a lot to work on with myself, and we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't need no more babies either.
I don't need no man. Yeah, you said before, how many children do you have now?
I have 6.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My oldest is 21 and my baby will be 13 on the 23rd. So they're all teenagers.
So does it ever?
Good. You don't need it. You're good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're almost in the clear,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, don't have any more. You're just about done.
No.
No, that's not true. My mom always says the first 40 years of parenthood are the hardest ones.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. So tell us before we give you a break here, Starla, tell us a little bit about how this, does this continue to affect your mental health? Do you wake up some days and does it still get you down, or have you just completely found acceptance with this and life is good?
I still have my moments where, I'll cry to my mom because, when I get sick, I get really sick. I think for the most part that I have accepted it, and I'm starting to talk about it a little bit more, and the most part is feeling safe, right? And I feel like I'm getting there slowly. Even I found in research, my schoolwork and stuff, all my research papers have been on HIV, so I'm trying to incorporate it into my life and be there to educate other people that might not know what it is all about, right? So yeah, I think I'm getting there for sure.
We've got a comment from Nicole here, all the way from Australia. Nicole says in Australia, the only help is non-government organizations. The government want us all sick. Sorry, not sorry. It's the truth. And we're going to talk about that more with Larissa.
Sure, I love talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know. I got that vibe when we did our pre-interview. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Starla, before we give you a break and turn the light on Larissa?
Nope. I'm good.
Okay. Cool. Well, we're just gonna put you down in the corner here. So feel free to join the conversation if you feel there's something that needs to be said. So, Larissa, when we spoke on whatever day that was, a couple of days ago, one of the first talking points you wanted to make sure we addressed was how poorly the HIV crisis is understood in Saskatchewan. Now, can you unpack that for us?
Sure. Yeah. I think, probably this audience has a good understanding of what I'm talking about when I say that, but I think you go a little bit more broad into quote unquote mainstream or, middle to upper class places, and people don't have a firm understanding of exactly how significant the HIV crisis is in Saskatchewan. And when I say crisis, I mean, you talk to somebody like Starla, and it's really important to hear, like, HIV, you can get through the initial parts of it and get your virus undetectable, and then that's it, right? I mean, it really is that simple once you get there, right, Starla? You take your medication every day, and the virus is gone. But I think the crisis in Saskatchewan is the spread of HIV rapidly, and we're not controlling that spread when we very easily could be. And many other places in the world, other places that deal with people using substances and homelessness and all the same things that we struggle with, they still find a way to manage it, right? And they still find a way to get things under control. And we're not doing that great of a job in Saskatchewan, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what demographics are you seeing most frequently seeking services related to HIV infection?
Well, I think it's really, again, important from getting Starla's perspective, because it's actually women, right? It's women of childbearing age, women who are younger in their teens to their 20s and 30s. That's one of the biggest demographics we see, and actually the most alarming in terms of HIV, right? Historically, HIV is, often spread amongst men. It was, men having sex with men community, women of childbearing age. The only other place that we see that is actually in Africa. And so it speaks to, again, at my first point of how uncontrolled things are here in Saskatchewan. Of course, we see it amongst people who inject drugs. That's a very easy mode to transmit the virus. And I think Starla also alluded to this when she spoke. You don't know how somebody gets it, right? Just because somebody injects drugs, that doesn't mean they didn't contact it heterosexually. And we speak to a lot of young women and men, a lot of young people, but more so women, who haven't injected drugs. They might have a partner who does, or, so that
or not.
When you look at HIV statistics, if you pull it up for Saskatchewan, it's going to say, oh, it's IV drug use. That's the number one risk factor. I don't really like, those of us who provide this type of care, we don't necessarily like that being the label, because everybody who uses drugs, I think, has sex. So I mean, hey, there might be a few asexuals out there, and all power to you. But this sort of idea that that's the only way, or that's the main way. I mean, the heterosexual transmissions is a major thing in our province. And so yeah, a lot of young people, the base of it is that young people, Indigenous people, are overrepresented, and that's not the way things should be. That's because we're not taking care of our people, right? That's HIV goes where people aren't being taken care of, and so that's the way that we see it in our field, and we need to do a better job.
Can it be a death sentence?
It shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be. It's to be honest with you, I really like the social side of medicine. I mean, medicine is okay, but it's one of the easiest medical conditions to treat, to be honest with you. You put somebody on medication. I think Starla's situation, you were pretty sick when you presented, and that, that can happen for sure. But most people who get diagnosed earlier in their course of their infection, potentially, it's pretty simple. One pill once a day, and it's undetectable. And so, can you die of AIDS? Definitely. And people in Saskatchewan still do die of AIDS, and that shouldn't be happening. Again, that doesn't happen in a lot of other places in the world. Yeah. But we can prevent that. Absolutely.
Now, Doctor, if I can interject for just a quick second here. And this relates to taking care of our people, and the comment that you just made. I heard, and I believe it was from a pretty reliable source, that there is like a once a day sort of a pill that a person can take as a preventative. And if that is the case, how do people obtain that? Like, if they're covered, is it for free, or is there a cost per pill? Like, how does that all look?
Yeah, so it's called PrEP. It's pre-exposure prophylaxis is the term. It's a single pill. And it is available. We offer it at our clinic. It is covered if you're on social assistance, or if your status, there's coverage for it. If you're sort of, unfortunately for the working middle class or working poor, things like that can be a little bit more challenging, but it's covered. It's a covered medication. So here's another example. Most other places in the world have really, really robust PrEP programs, right? These are programs that are funded. They have outreach. They have all these things in place to make sure that we're getting as much PrEP out there as possible. We don't have that here. You know what I mean? And and it's not for a lack of trying. It's just a lack of, a lack of the political will to make that a priority. And that should be a priority. We could prevent a lot of infection if we had more people on PrEP, if we had more awareness of PrEP. When we're just not doing it.
So you said a little while ago here that people are still dying in Saskatchewan of AIDS. Mm-hmm. What do you think the number one barrier is that is allowing that to continue to happen?
Well, I mean, if you want to, it depends on how you want to come at this. So it's always, you can simply say it's always housing or lack of social supports, right? People can't, people when they're, in states and they don't have supportive family members, even like in Starla's case, they don't have anywhere to go. And you don't have anywhere to go, well, you keep using because that's the only way to find relief, right? I mean, it's the only way to stay alive, actually. If you're on the street and you don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, Starla, but if you don't have a place to sleep, and crystal meth keeps you alert, keeps you awake, keeps you alive, actually. So
I think Donna can speak a little bit to that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bang on.
Oh yeah, definitely bang on.
So it's lack of the supports, it's lack of housing that really is the thing, right? I mean, what does this all boil down to? It boils down to traumatized individuals, right? People who are living and suffering with trauma and don't have their trauma acknowledged. And that's the harder thing to deal with. But I mean, we have to meet people's needs in order for them to be able to heal. And again, I think Starla explained this perfectly. You need that safety, right? You need safety and you need a safe space to start that process of healing. And if we can't create those spaces for people, it makes it pretty challenging.
Yeah.
To do something simple, like take a pill a day, right?
Yeah.
It's actually pretty simple. Yeah.
Sounds really simple. Yeah. But I mean, I've been in situations too where simple things seemed impossible. So there's, but speaking of like being properly housed and stuff, how cost effective is it to properly house and treat someone living with HIV/AIDS as opposed to allowing them to remain unhoused and untreated?
Yeah, I think, there's been a lot of work done in the cost effectiveness. So I always say, whether you care about human beings or you care about money, whether you care about the economy or you care about people, I mean, you should care about both, but whatever, pick your poison. Treating HIV, housing people living with HIV is cost effective. And there's many cost models that prove this. The amount of money it costs even to pay for somebody's HIV meds for their lifetime is nothing compared to repeated hospital admissions, repeated endless cycle of, in and out of substance use and the negative effects from substance use. And then eventually dying with HIV is very, very costly. You're talking ICU stays, you're talking very, very prolonged stays in hospital. It's a very, very slow and tragic and painful process for people. Completely unnecessary. Housing and HIV medication, not that much money when you compare it to the millions and millions of dollars that one person can cost the system.
Pales in comparison. Mm-hmm. So what is there, like, is there a point of no return? Like at what point does it come to a place where this person can no longer be helped? Like tell us a little bit about the progression of this.
Yeah, it's funny because HIV and AIDS isn't like cancer, like really with cancer, we kind of can really find that point of no return and say, the end is coming. It's probably going to be weeks to months or months to years. That point isn't as clear with HIV and AIDS. And again, it comes down to the treatment and the care. Even if somebody is diagnosed with an AIDS defining illness or needs to take several pills to get those things gone, they can bounce back. I've had people who have had a CD4 count of 1. Like,
what does that mean?
CD4 count. So we monitor the immune system. So HIV, just for those who don't know, obviously attacks the immune system, and immune systems are our natural defense system, right? So it's fighting off all the infections we get. It's fighting off, anything that we might contact that. If you have a healthy immune system, you can fight it off. If HIV is taking your immune system down, even simple things that you wouldn't get an infection from, you can start getting infections from. So and your CD4 cells are the cells that it attacks. And so if, we monitor that CD4 count very closely, because that's the determining factor of your health. If that CD4 count is high, you have a good immune system. If it's low, you don't have an immune system and you're very vulnerable to very bad illnesses. So, we like people to be above 200 to make sure they're safe. 400 to 1,000 is really, really healthy, and you're good to go. I've had people with CD4 counts of 1 to 8, plummeted, and they come bounce back. They can if they get the proper support.
So for anyone who might not know, including me, I might be a little foggy on this as well.
Yep.
Is it the AIDS that kills, or is it the infections that you get because your immune system can't fight them?
Exactly. It's the infections that you get because your immune system can't fight them. We AIDS was the word that we used a lot in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s when, we didn't have as much, better terminology, but you can get an AIDS defining illness, which would be those infections that might kill you. And those are the things that eventually kill you. It's kind of a system overload in terms of those infections with no immune system to fight it off.
So let's
my
talk
CD4
about.
count was 7. My CD4
right?
count was 7, and now I'm back up to I think it was in the 900s.
Amazing, so, right? Like you're an amazing. Yeah.
So what's average then? So what's average then?
Well, average CD4 count is is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, what's a healthy person's
400 to 1,000 kind of thing. That's where any of us would be sitting, whether we're living with HIV or not. If you're living with HIV and you're on pills, we're looking at about 400 to 1,000. Yeah, and I think Starla's point, Starla's, her story is so important
on the top
because
end.
Yeah, she's on top end now, but she was sitting right at the bottom. And that's, all those pills that you kind of talked about needing to take to get things going. That was to get her back, like she said, right? To a place now where she maybe doesn't need to take most of those pills anymore and can just now, treat the virus and keep it under control.
So why does some of the medication make a person so sick?
If you were newly diagnosed today and your CD4 count was still maintained, we would put you on one pill. And that pill, usually one pill, it might be a couple pills sometimes, but usually one. And those pills are pretty good. In terms of side effects, you compare it to all medications, they've really, really drilled this down into perfection. It's really, really easy to take these meds now. In a case, I think in Starla's case, because she started from a place where her immune system was quite run down, you put multiple pills on top of each other to try to get things up and going, probably a lot of antibiotics actually. And that's where those sicknesses would come in. But actually the medications themselves that are killing the HIV or keeping it gone, pretty easy to take. I mean, from what I hear, from what our studies show, from what the patients say.
So let's talk about some of the collateral damage that can occur from having people going untreated in our communities.
Sorry, just briefly before we move on, the specific medication that you referenced there, does Starla have to take that for the rest of her life, or is there a point at which she could discontinue?
No, she has to take it for the rest of her life as it stands right now. We haven't. HIV is a very, really, really smart virus. So its ability to change and mutate really quickly is like nothing else we've ever seen. So we've talked, we know more about viruses because of coronavirus, right? That virus changes a little bit over time, but we've been able to try to get a handle on it. This one changes so quick that if we're not coming at it with 3 drugs at once at all times, it'll change itself and be resistant. And so that's why actually that one pill is 3 pills. And it's all combined into one to be really, really active against that virus, coming at it from all sides so that it doesn't have time to change. We haven't been able to figure out how to cure that because it's so smart, because it can change so much. Vaccines are developed and then the virus changes and it doesn't work, right? So yeah, it's lifelong.
So, and with this collateral damage, now I know we've already discussed some of this, but what are some other things that you're seeing that are bringing harm to people who have these challenges?
Well, again, I think this kind of came up already when Starla explained, people giving up, right? That's actually one of the biggest things. To be diagnosed and not have that wraparound support, not have people there to take care of you and talk you through it and walk you through actually the simplicity of how this can go, people give up and they use more and they almost try to kill themselves, like Starla said, right? That's probably the worst thing. I mean, from my perspective, that is the worst thing. The other problem is that in that state of giving up, you're not treating your virus, your viral load is high, you're potentially still engaging in harmful behaviors, and the virus is spreading, right? Every new person potentially that gets contacted, then the virus, that's another new diagnosis. And so the collateral damage of not treating it just on those two things alone is massive. You know, somebody's imminent demise, and then potentially the transmission to multiple other people. So that is why we have, you know, models throughout the world that target people who are newly diagnosed, get them as much support as they need, get them undetectable, and we can actually get rid of HIV. Like, we honestly can. You get a community viral load low enough, and it doesn't spread anymore because there's none of it out there.
Okay, well, that's all that I've got here for talking points and questions. Donna?
No, all my questions have been answered. Thank you, ladies.
Okay. Is there anything that either of you would like to add before we cap it off?
HIV has shaped me into the person that I am today, but it does not define me. That's how I look at it.
Awesome. Okay, well, Starla, thank you. I understand that this is the first time that you've spoken publicly about this. That's very courageous. So
very courageous.
Thank you for seeing it through. I think you did a wonderful job. I know a thing or two about this. So yeah, and Larissa, thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. And we will let you go. Take care, my friends.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, if you are getting something out of what we're doing here, you can find all our audios on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or live and interactive right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch TV. Thanks for watching. Take care, my friends.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.